Don't fall asleep yet. Hey there, economics enthusiasts. Or maybe you just clicked this by accident. Let's talk about macroeconomics. It's about the big picture of how an economy works. Think of it as trying to understand the entire ocean, not just one fish. We'll cover the heavy hitters, GDP, inflation, unemployment. We'll also dive into how governments try to control the economy. Spoiler alert, it doesn't always work. Oh, and we can't forget about international trade, because who doesn't love a good tariff war, right? By the end of this, you'll at least be able to hold your own in a conversation about the economy, or at least impress your date who thinks economics is sexy. It's not. But don't tell them I said that. Buckle up, Buttercup. It's about to get econ interesting. First up, GDP, or gross domestic product. This is the total value of all the goods and services produced in a country in a year. Think of it as a giant pie representing a country's economic output. The bigger the pie, the better, right? But here's the catch. GDP doesn't tell us how the pie is divided. One guy could be hoarding most of the pie, leaving crumbs for everyone else. That's where things like income inequality come in. But that's a whole other can of worms. GDP is also not a perfect measure of well-being. It doesn't account for things like happiness, environmental sustainability, or the value of unpaid work. Sorry, stay-at-home parents. But it's a good starting point for understanding a country's economic performance. So next time you hear someone bragging about their country's GDP, just remember, it's not the whole story, but it's a start. Inflation, the silent thief in your wallet. It means your money is losing value over time. Remember when a candy bar cost a nickel? Yeah, me neither. That's inflation for you. It happens when the prices of goods and services go up. There are different types of inflation, but we'll keep it simple for now. Just know that a little bit of inflation is normal. It's when it gets out of control that we have a problem. Think of it like this. You're playing a video game where the enemies keep getting stronger, but your weapons stay the same. Eventually, you're going to get your butt kicked. That's what high inflation does to your purchasing power. So, how do we fight inflation? That's where our good friends, fiscal and monetary policy come in, but we'll get to those later. Unemployment, when people who want to work can't find jobs. It's like going on a million first dates and getting ghosted every time. It's a real downer. High unemployment can be a sign of a struggling economy. It means people aren't earning income, which means they're not spending money, which means businesses are suffering. See how it's all connected? But here's the thing, the unemployment rate doesn't tell the whole story either. It doesn't include people who have given up looking for work, or those stuck in part-time jobs who want full-time gigs. So, yeah, the job market is complex, but understanding unemployment is crucial to understanding the overall health of an economy. Section 5. Fiscal policy, the government's wallet. Time for some government intervention. Fiscal policy is how the government uses its spending and taxes to influence the economy. It's like trying to steer a giant ship with a tiny rudder. Good luck with that. When the economy is sluggish, the government can increase spending or cut taxes to boost demand. This is called expansionary fiscal policy. It's like giving everyone in the economy a little sugar rush. On the other hand, when the economy is overheating, the government can decrease spending or raise taxes to cool things down. This is called contractionary fiscal policy. It's like taking away everyone's sugar rush and making them eat kale instead. Of course, fiscal policy is much more complicated than that, and it's often subject to political gridlock. But you get the general idea. Section 6, monetary policy, the Fed's balancing act. Now, for the other lever the government can pull, monetary policy. This one is controlled by the central bank. In the US, it's the Federal Reserve or the Fed. They're like the cool kids in the back of the class who control the economy with interest rates. When the economy needs a boost, the Fed can lower interest rates, making it cheaper to borrow money. This encourages people to spend and invest, which stimulates the economy. Think of it like giving the economy a shot of espresso. When the economy is getting too hot, the Fed can raise interest rates to slow things down. This makes borrowing more expensive, which discourages spending and investment. Think of it like throwing a bucket of cold water on the economy. The Fed's decisions can have a huge impact on the economy, so they have to be careful not to overdo it. It's a delicate balancing act. Section 7, international trade, not just capitalism, but global capitalism. Remember that whole global economy thing? Yeah, that's international trade in a nutshell. Countries buying and selling goods and services from each other. It's like a giant flea market, but with more tariffs and trade agreements. Some countries are better at producing certain goods than others. This is called comparative advantage. For example, Saudi Arabia is really good at producing oil, while Japan is really good at producing cars. It makes sense for them to trade with each other, right? International trade can lead to lower prices, increased competition, and a wider variety of goods for consumers, but it can also lead to job losses in certain industries and exploitation of workers in developing countries. Like most things in economics, it's complicated. Section 8, exchange rates, making sense of currency conversions. Ever traveled to another country and had to exchange your money? That's the exchange rate in action. It's simply the price of one currency in terms of another. For example, $1 might get you 0.80 euros. Exchange rates can fluctuate based on a variety of factors like interest rates, economic growth, and political stability. When a country's currency is strong, it can buy more goods and services from other countries, but it also makes their exports more expensive. On the other hand, a weak currency makes a country's exports cheaper, but imports more expensive. It's all a delicate balancing act. Section 9, economic growth versus development, quality over quantity. Economic growth and economic development might sound similar, but they're not quite the same thing. Economic growth is about increasing the size of the economic pie, while economic development is about making sure everyone gets a slice. Economic growth is typically measured by GDP growth, while economic development is measured by factors like life expectancy, literacy rates, and access to healthcare. It's the difference between having more money and having a better quality of life. A country can have high economic growth, but low economic development if the benefits of growth are not distributed equally. It's like having a fancy sports car, but no roads to drive it on. Section 10, demand pull versus cost push inflation, two sides of the same coin. Remember inflation, that pesky thing that makes your money worth less? Well, there are different types of inflation, and two of the most common are demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Demand pull inflation happens when there's too much money chasing too few goods. Think of it like a popular toy everyone wants for Christmas. The price will go up because the demand is so high. Cost push inflation, on the other hand, happens when the costs of production increase, forcing businesses to raise prices. Think of it like the price of oil going up, which makes it more expensive to produce and transport goods. Both types of inflation can lead to higher prices, but they have different causes and require different solutions. It's like trying to put out a fire. You need to know what's causing it before you can extinguish it. Section 11. Conclusion. You now understand the economy, sort of. Congratulations, you've made it through this crash course on macroeconomics. You now know more about the economy than most people. Don't let it get to your head. We've covered the basics of GDP, inflation, unemployment, fiscal and monetary policy, international trade, exchange rates, economic growth versus development, and even different types of inflation. Whew, that's a lot to digest. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The economy is a complex and ever-changing beast. There's always more to learn. So go forth and impress your friends with your newfound economic knowledge. Or at least try to make sense of the business section of the newspaper. Remember, economics doesn't have to be boring. It's about understanding the world around us and how we can make it a better place, or at least try to understand why everything is so expensive these days.